All right, everybody, we're coming back from the break. It's called the Business to Business Network Show. My name is Rex Perry, and if you want any information, you hear something, you would like to participate, 123bz.com. Reach out to me, text me, email me, call me. Everything is right there on the website, 123bz.com. And again, our guest is Tom. Tom, give us your last name. Introduce yourself, please.
My name's Tom Joseph. I'm the founder and treasurer of America's Main Street Party and producer of Wilson's Fountain. Wilson's Fountain is a repurposing of our existing political committee system so that we can have a fair nominating contest.
And you are located where? Where are you at?
I'm a Pittsburgher. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Main Street Party I launched out of Philadelphia. I'm using college students that go to Penn, Drexel, Temple, Haverford. Wilson was the first law professor at University of Pennsylvania. James Wilson was the founding father who wrote both the U.S. Constitution and the Pennsylvania Constitution. Many state constitutions, they basically just copied the Pennsylvania Constitution. It's so well written. And anyway, a famous guy who went bankrupt and we kind of got buried in history because he died in shame, but he was one of the first 4 Supreme Court justices.
Wow. Well, we have the ASU Political Club that are participating with our radio show. So when we do our next recording, we're going to have a representative from the ASU. So we want to get young people involved here. And that's why having some sort of smartphone app and a voting system, it gives an opportunity to do an end run around the blockers. There's a lot of political people that do not want to have any changes. They like the primary system the way it is because it gives them so much power, so much control. Now, in particular issues, so on the platform, on the app platform, we could touch a hot button issue like guns. After Sandy
it's
Hook.
really about making them accountable on guns. I mean, think about it. The constituents are going to weigh in on these 7 issues. If a local issue is about gun control, that the local nominating committee can make sure that that issue is on the issue indicator and that the candidates must weigh in on the position. And like I said, they can elaborate on the positions. There might be 3, 4, 5 different positions on this, but it would allow the candidates and the constituents to map to each other. So and it could be a very conservative, very liberal district may have particular issues that they're pink, baby blue on. Yeah. And this allows, that candidate to stand out. And so it could be, a conservative district that's not tied into the energy lobby and really cares about the environment.
Yeah.
And, Ben, a candidate that's pink on that issue but matches them socially on the other ones is going to be able to stand out, and they'll be able to get resolution on that in Congress because you get 2 years to get it done.
Yep. And you have an independent support to fall back on rather than being the fear of being primaried. We've heard this over and over and over, and it's been very powerful. This concept of being primaried happened even before Donald Trump. If you remember, Jake Garn up in Utah, he got beat in the primary.
There's people in both houses on both political parties. Their names are whips.
Yeah.
And they're to whip up votes. This sounds like the most, I got to think that the framers would be rolling over in their graves, hearing about the fact that somebody controls donors' money, gets people to vote on legislation, and has nothing to do with what their constituents want. I mean, that's what is really where we lose our voice, is when the whips tell people in Congress how to vote. In our system, the people are the whip. The money, that part, there's no such thing as a whip for our party. The whip is when they go back through the nominating process and have to be accountable for how they performed.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that I did an interview years and years ago. It was a very nice lady. She had been a real estate agent, so she had been on my radio show multiple times, and she ran for the state legislature. And lo and behold, she won and became a state representative. And she told me off the air that when she went to her very first meeting with the Republican Party in the state house here, the whip told her to sit down, shut up, and vote when we tell you to vote, and we'll tell you what to vote for. I mean, she was shocked. She was shocked at the at the lack of the ability to be able to get anybody to listen to her, to allow her the freedom. And the way it should work is that individuals should be able to go across party lines and gather together a universal background check for guns, for example, and get enough people on both sides of the aisle to say, you know what, let's get this through the House of Representatives. And then you get it over the Senate. And again, if you've got some independent voices in the Senate that are not fearful of being primaried, now you've got an opportunity to actually pass legislation that actually benefits people rather than the gun lobby, rather than the tech bros, right? Rather than all of the billions and billions of dollars that go into these campaigns. We've got to really change the idea, and that's what you're looking for. Exactly that, correct?
Yeah, well, money doesn't incentivize moderation. I mean, unfortunately, people aren't spending, hey, I got this moderate agenda I'm going to spend a lot of money on. I mean, it's really the extreme things that pushes the money, and it drives our elections. And, that's why, I really was trying to figure out how do you really change the relationship between politicians and money? And you have to change the incentives. Let's get back, I'm a business person, and, to incentivize behavior, you change the way money works. And I just, really stumbled across this legal way for us to achieve what we want to achieve through election reform without changing any laws.
Yeah, and that's
one of the things about.
Yeah.
I was going to say one of the things about we could have ranked choice voting everywhere. We could have open primaries everywhere. We could overturn Citizens United, but it's still the money drives re-elections, and it's still rigged to re-elect incumbents.
Yeah.
As long as it's rigged to re-elect incumbents, they're not accountable.
And what you're talking about is using technology because we're going to be doing interviews very soon with what do they call open primaries? And open primaries have been beating their head against the door for generations. In fact, this last election, there was an item on the ballot to introduce open primaries to the state of Arizona, and it failed. And these poor people, I mean, I love them, but they've been working at this for years.
Yeah, but a lot of times the parties come out with these confusion campaigns, and they just confuse voters, and if they confuse enough voters, it doesn't pass. And it's really a shame. I mean, it's an injustice. The citizens they pass these reforms. They happen in Utah. They want these, and they either fail or they pass, and then the legislature ignores it and gerrymanders anyway.
Yeah. In fact, that would be one of the issues. Could we have some sort of nationwide? Now, see, the states are set up to do the voting, but could we have some sort of effort, even on a state-by-state level, for the candidates to say, you know what, we're going to come up with a way to no longer allow the state legislature to decide where the boundaries are, but have some sort of independent committee. And I think in Arizona we've got that. Yeah.
Guess what, though?
Yeah.
If the elections are free and equal and they're fair, you wouldn't want to gerrymander. Think about this. If you're in a district and you're a certain ideology, and you all like this, do you want to really bring another town in that doesn't think like you to then push your representative further left or right? So it really gets back to once elections are free and equal, the whole desire to gerrymander goes away. In fact, you'd want to do the opposite.
Yeah, and bring down some of the cost of these elections are getting cost-wise are getting totally out of control, and unfortunately the people with no money don't get their voice heard, and the people with the money are controlling everything on that. Again, give us your website one more time. What is the how can people reach you?
There's two websites, wilsonfountain.us, and you mentioned about the economy of this. I had college students researching different aspects of free and equal elections, like do they quell extremism, how to design this nominating system. One of them was about how would this affect the economy over time? Like, where is money spent? And so one of the papers, in fact, was just released by a guy who's a senior at Penn, talked about like the economic impact of having free and equal elections, like over time when we eventually get to the point where we kill the public primary and get rid of advertising elections. But wilsonfountain.us is where we're studying kind of free and equal elections. America's Main Street Party, the website for that is mainstreetparty.org, and that's where you can learn about how the nominating process works. Like I said, we are approaching this like a business, and I would say that we're through what we call proof of concept. I had some college students research the legalities. That was the guys from Penn. The folks that developed the prototype were software engineers from Drexel. We had a guy from Haverford who's really been the guy who's really the brains behind how the whole system works. So it's really been neat to see these young people kind of get engaged with this and believe that something can be done differently and really look at this in a very unconstrained ways. There's no laws that we have to worry about in terms of how we design this.
And one more thing, tell us about Ramon's project again. Describe that for the audience again and his background, because he was in the military, I believe. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and he actually recruited. The first time I talked to him, Ramon related the story about these folks fought for our democracy and they come back over here and they feel like it's falling apart. And one of the ways that he thought he could contribute is to basically do the things you're talking about. On very specific pieces of legislation. They're doing it, and their prototype is in Florida. They're more than a prototype. They're piloting and launching this. But the idea is that citizens register on the Votes app and connect to the Digital Democracy Project. And as legislation appears before the Florida legislature, they would basically say, here's what we want. And so somebody from District 5 or whatever in Florida could look to see, hey, what are my people in the district, and he or she knows that those are actual voters. They've been verified. They've gone through the Votes app, and that this is how they feel about something that they're about to vote on.
That's what we've got to do is get the technology in here. And by the way, a lot of times people say they use the word blockchain. Well, I did an interview with one of the engineers that helped design the blockchain, and he basically described it and made it so very clear. He says, try to envision you have an accountant that has a spreadsheet, and the accountant's keeping track of the books, and he's keeping these records of the books of who's buying what, who's doing what, and it's like and then you have a second accountant double checking that accountant's work, and then a third accountant trying to envision 1,000 of these guys double checking, confirming. Let's say there's a sale of real estate that Jones sold to Smith. Now you got 1,000 different platforms that have confirmed that Jones sold to Smith on this particular date. And that is like multiple servers spread all over the place, so that if one server goes down, something gets destroyed, you've got backup after backup after backup. And so that's basically a very simple explanation of this confusing blockchain technology. It's very simple, but you do have to have a whole bunch of energy and servers to do it. But we got about 2 minutes left here. I want to make sure, give us the two websites one more time, please, Tom.
It's wilsonfountain.us and mainstreetparty.org. And one thing we should think about is that this is, because it's a nominating system, not an election system, it's like a sandbox where we can play with this. And if it produces a candidate that people don't like, they don't have to vote for them in the general election. But, the thing is that we need to do new things. And you talked about coming up with an end around. I, as a business person, look at this like we're trying to take on a monopoly. And you can either take them on head on, like they're trying to with the election reform, or you figure out the runaround.
Yeah.
And this is the runaround. This is the novel way to, fix the system. If they won't let us fix the election system, we're going to build a better primary.
Excellent.
People's primary.
Excellent. And that other one was called Votes, VOATZ, I think. Is that how that was spelled?
VOATZ is the app that does all the security. The Digital Democracy Project is an organization that's taking votes and creating functionality in Florida to help the Florida legislature.
Excellent. Tom,
the idea is that our part creates accountability on the front end, that the candidates will have to say where they stand on certain positions. But once they get in there, too, what the Digital Democracy Project doing, saying on the back end, they can continue to let the legislature know what they want.
Tom, we got to wrap this up. You've been a great guest. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. 123bz.com. If you want any answers to questions, we will see you next week.